Hello, everybody. In this podcast, I want to discuss one or two ways in which we can help reduce politics in our lives, meaning basically to reduce government up to its elimination. So up to zero government from, let's say, 100% government to zero government, right? That is if you already recognized that government politics is violence. Now, if you don't understand why politics is violence or government is violence, I urge you to go back to some of my previous podcasts. And I've mentioned this a dozen times. But just to recap, the reason why government is violence is because, okay, let me pick an example. How does government get money? Through taxes, right? Well, taxes, usually they are part of the duties that we give government to do. So we tell government, hey, government, tax us to do certain things for us, right? And then they can tax us, let's say fund something. Now, because government itself is not a consensual agreement, that's why if you might come across the social contract, right? So it's not really a contract where you and I actually sign it, agree. No. It's something that is binding because somehow it just exists. So we are born into a country that has government. And that idea of a social contract, because we are born into that group, we are bound by the rules existing, meaning the government. So, like, for example, I was born in Nigeria. Therefore, I have to obey the Constitution, even though I didn't agree with it. Like, even though, literally, I didn't agree with it, but I have to agree. I have to obey. But that's all a sham. That's not how we do things in real life. Let me give you an example. If I come to you right now and say, you know what? My forefathers used to live around where you are. And there was a social contract that every car you have, half of it is my own. Everything you get, half of it is my own. Would you ever even believe me? You probably think I'm crazy. But there's no difference. No difference whatsoever. In 1960, when we got our independence, we didn't agree to any of this. Somebody did it. And we have to obey. So in real life, that's not how people do contract. That's not what contract is. Contract means you agree, I agree, and we'll go into business. I cannot ask you to do something when you don't agree. If I do that, it's called stealing. Rape. Right? So that's why government is stealing. Social contract is a sham. It's just, we are finding a way to describe it. But in real life, how you interact in your day-to-day activity, you will never agree to such a thing, ever. And if you will, just let me know. I can just say, my forefathers have a social contract around where you are born, and because you happen to be born there, half of your wealth is mine. If you agree, let me know, and I will come and get half of your wealth. Of course you wouldn't, right? So that's why government is violence. You just some kind of contract that you never agreed on, that I never agreed on, is imposed upon us, and we have to obey. And so when government tax us to pay for something that we don't agree on, well, what do you call someone taking your stuff without your approval? Stealing. Armed robbery. No difference morally. Taking someone else's property without their consent. Right? So that's why government is violence. Now, so how do we reduce it? How do we take it off our lives? Well, one, there's a constitution that tells the government to do things, right? How about if we remove those things? Really? So we say, for example, government, you own our resources. What about if we say, no, you don't own our resources? That is the end. We'll remove it out of the constitution, then government doesn't have power to exercise over our resources. If you find oil in your land, gold is your own. If I find, it's my own. No one will come and take it. You can defend it, right? So that's one, to remove it out of the constitution. And that is the best. To keep removing it until the government has zero power, then it doesn't exist. Two is a little more, is less than the first one. That one we start slowly. So you know how we have federal government, state, and local government? Right now, for example, federal government has the power of natural resources. We can say, okay, let's take that power and give it to states. Then later on, let's say, let's take it and give it to local government. And then later on, you know what? Let's take it away from local government hands and just allow people to have it. So you are slowly taking power away from bigger government to smaller ones, closer to the people. That's why in advanced countries you would have, in a city will have police. Everything is closer. You get my gist. So that is the second way. And not as best as the first one. Other than that, I don't know what else we can do. Really, the idea is take it away. Use the Constitution to take those powers away. If we take those powers away, then government wouldn't do anything on our behalf. That means if you have your oil, right? If I need it, I buy it from you. Or maybe you pity me and give it to me. But it has to be with your consent. And really, no one will be fighting over anything anymore. Right? Right now in Niger Delta area, when people think everything is their own, it doesn't belong to anybody, then people will fight to get their own share. And that's kind of the situation with politics. Politics everywhere is corrupt. Whenever there is power given to someone, there is likely to be corruption. So I hope that makes sense. If you want to understand more, if you have any criticism about what I just said, do not hesitate to contact me however you can. Social media, email, commenting on this podcast. Let's talk. I'm willing to talk. I really want people to understand what government is. It's just a mafia in disguise. And we need to slowly remove it in our lives. Not violently, no violence, peacefully. And we can do that through the voting, to vote someone who would take those powers away from government and give it to us. Slowly one day, government will have like one power. I'll be like, oh, we don't need that violence. Let's dissolve it. And people will live in peace forever and ever after. Thank you very much, and I'll talk to you soon.